Thank you for staying with us. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has extended the voting time in some polling units. That commenced late. We know that INEC Commissioner for Voter Education, Mr. Festus Okoye, made the announcement and said that the decision was reached following the inability of some polling units to begin voting at 8 a.m. and the number of hours lost.
Yes, and we still have Najib Bello and Segun Shokmito, public affairs analysts, in the studio to look at developing stories across the country. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Now, we were expecting initially that 2 p.m. was going to be the call-off time, but it's now 3 o'clock and we have a few minutes to go to 3 o'clock. Do you think the 1 hour extension really would have necessarily changed anything, using the case study of the place where they started voting at about 12:40?
Of course, since they've already been at the center, the people are already at the center, I think they will be able to allow everybody who appeared before 3 p.m. to vote in that center. So I think it does make a difference. However, I wish the units which started very late, I wish they had more time, maybe 4 p.m. I think 1 hour is not enough for places that there was delay of up to maybe 4 hours, 5 hours.
It's actually 10 minutes to 3 already.
Exactly. So I think even a longer extension would help. But then we are talking about people who would just be coming. In terms of people who have already been at the venue, at the polling units, I think 3 p.m. is enough extension for them.
But the influx of people, that additional 1 hour, do you think that would put a whole lot of pressure more on INEC? Segun?
Well, it's an additional hour to allow more people on the queue. Really, that's what it does. Because if you're already on the queue, then you must vote, even if you don't finish voting until 4, whatever time it is. So I doubt that this does very much, because I think the only impact for me that this would have is allowing people who might have gone back home because materials were not available and they were sort of getting tired and to come back and join the queue. So I don't expect any significant pressure or whatever.
Do you suspect that the speed at which certain polling units have, quickly gotten people voted, do you suspect that maybe the results might be correlated today and, somewhat, at least half of those results put out before the end of today?
Ordinarily, you would have said maybe, but there's one factor that's going to be a major deterrent for that, and it's the fact that you've got 73 candidates and 73 political parties, and bearing in mind that collation is manual, so they've got the electronic one that they will transmit, and then there's the one that they must write. There is no way you're getting results today.
So it means we're pulling an all-nighter, I guess.
Exactly.
Almost inevitably.
Well, we still have some more updates coming in, and definitely we'll bring you abreast with all of those as they happen. But we have to take a look at the situation in Maraba and discuss all of the developments from that area. It was a pretty chaotic one, and please do watch.
I'm not happy with the delay. As they say, we're supposed to board early because around 2, they will close everything. So after that, they don't start anything, so I'm not happy.
These polling booths, they say have about 20,000 registered voters. And if about 20,000 registered voters, and by this time they have not started, you can check the number, even by the crowd outside. If there's at least up to 50 or 60% turnout, it will be difficult to finish in a day. I don't foresee them I don't see everybody that is here voting within the stipulated time.
goodness, I have never seen anything like that in the history of elections in Nigeria.
Throngs of people.
I know. There was a woman who was being, fanned somewhat. It's like she almost passed out. That could have been a stampede of sorts. Look, the security agents were overwhelmed. They literally would have pushed that gate down.
Najib, quickly, weighing on this.
This is lack of planning, lack of organization. They knew the volume of people that would be coming to that center. And when you have a situation like this where there is a delay, there's no need to lock the gates. They should have allowed the people come inside the center, sit around and wait for materials to arrive, not lock the gates and create that huge mob outside. I think someone should be sanctioned for this.
Well, they would say that's their own means of doing some crowd control. Segun, don't you think? Because if they allow people to queue in, that would be an endless queue. Look at the number of people there, in thousands, I think.
Yeah. I'm sure it's one of those centers where you've got multiple polling units, maybe even voting points, and but like Najib said, come on, it's just logic. You can't lock your gates against that many people only to open it with one single access point. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Causing a stampede.
Actually, they didn't even open it. It was when they were trying to make way for the electoral materials.
But I think it needs to be said that we don't know what the procedure is for INEC when it comes to arrival of materials. Ordinarily, INEC should have gotten there before voters.
This was 10:15.
Yes. So what's the procedure? Are voters supposed to be allowed into the polling center before INEC is on ground or not? I'm not sure about that. So maybe that's why they locked the gate, because INEC itself was not on ground yet. But whatever the case may be, I think the security guys should have used the initiative and understand that once you open this gate with this throng, there's going to be a stampede.
One of our previous guests had said that when you talk about logistics, security agencies have to have some basic knowledge of how to handle all of these things, working in consonance with INEC. So just as you've said, maybe if that common sense was common, they could have known that, look, let's let them just come in their numbers, find where to sit and wait quietly.
I mean, you could even have allowed them to come in and perhaps guard them, maybe form a cordon and guard them away from the main area where the rack activity is going to be happening or where the setting up by INEC would happen until INEC is ready, and then you say, you have form a queue rather than barricade the place.
You also saw how that official was just waving a hand helplessly, overwhelmed. That's the word to use to describe it.
Pushed down.
Once again, we see a situation where our security operatives can't seem to necessarily help coordinate the process.
I saw pictures were published in a paper how NSCDC were getting prepared. That's the civil defense. They're getting prepared for elections. When they were training them, they showed them carrying guns, pointing. That is not the kind of training they need for this kind of events. They need to know the procedure, crowd control. They need to know how to deal with some of these incidences. Even when people, let's assume someone fainted or you need to take care of a baby, or those are the things that they needed for this event. Those were FRSC members,
officials, yes.
And I don't know the kind of training they may have been given to handle this situation.
Because road safety is totally different from civil defense or the police.
So the election training would have taught them that you don't deal with an issue. I heard figures of about 20,000. That's what I heard someone mention for that center. And there was no way you should have locked them out like that. Even if the INEC procedure was that materials should arrive before this thing, INEC should have rethought that procedure when they knew they had the figures for that center.
But this is the FCT. How difficult is it to transport the materials there?
This is the central, the federal capital. It's weird. It's crazy.
Let's just move away from that and talk about other things. Pockets of violence in Lagos. I think we were a bit too hasty to commend Lagos for peaceful conduct, because we're getting feelers from different parts of Lagos, especially Okota, which is...
As well as Oshodi.
But in Okota, we see the sensitive materials being burned right in front of the electoral officers, and then in Oshodi there's also been violence. So it just, I heard you say something very interesting, saying that's the real Lagos. Is that really Lagos?
That's another side of Lagos. That's the other side of Lagos. The side of Lagos we are seeing. That's why I said, when you said you were surprised with Apapa, I think Apapa is one of the calm, it really is one of those calm parts of Lagos, not Olodi Apapa or whatever they call the other areas. But then you see Oshodi, Okota, Isolo. Then perhaps what I've seen is mainly the stronghold of the opposition. We know that Oshodi generally can be chaotic, but I think there's a pattern I'm seeing among where there's violence, and it's looking like it's in the strongholds of the oppositions. But I wonder, I saw a video of gunshots and people were running. It's difficult for me to understand how the security agents, how they would have seen or looked at this happen. I thought they would have been better prepared to handle.
Now we have images on our screen, and that's from Okota.
As we can see, the sensitive materials have all been burned. You can hear a woman's voice screaming at the background.
They just want our votes. They just want our votes.
Wow, she just said they just burned our votes.
This country is something else. They just burnt our votes. They just
look at the ballot box there and the ballot paper scattered.
They just burnt our votes. They just want our votes.
And we can see people trying to scamper for safety. Obviously, hoodlums have taken over
This country
area.
is something else. They just burnt our votes. They just burnt our votes. They burnt our votes. Can't you see? They just burnt our votes. They just want our votes.
This is very disheartening.
Responsible for this. Where were the security? Where was the police? Where was the military that was supposed to be sited about 100, 200 kilometers away from that polling unit?
And you know, they didn't even just snatch the ballot boxes and run. Burning is even a more settling. They settle down to burn. You don't just throw a match, and so it's as if they took their time, grabbed the ballot papers.
Well thought out.
But that's where we are supposed to have our reporters or the average Nigerian who is filming and capturing this moment. When you see the likelihood that some breakout is going, just try as much. If it is just one person's image, you discreetly get that information, and then you can now share it with the world or relevant authorities and ensure this individual is brought to book. Yes, I know safety is important, but they just want our votes. Who are the they?
Yes.
How do we hold people responsible?
The thing is that in such situations, you have to remember that people are, you basically default back to self-preservation, you know, and it's all hot. You are thinking of your safety first, and I don't think it'll take a huge amount of presence of mind to stay back, hide.
You have to be a journalist by nature.
You've got to be maybe a journalist or somebody, you know, like that. You know, so I'm not surprised. One of the other versions of that video that I saw, there was actually a policeman standing right there when the chaos started. He was right there, but you know, like we've said earlier, he would have been helpless because whoever's done this he couldn't have come alone. There would have been a group.
But does this translate to free, fair, credible elections then? If we have the IGP saying we are going to have free, fair, credible elections, and the police are well equipped and trained?
It's unfortunate, you know, like we've said earlier, our electoral history, anywhere in the world, anyway, you can't have an election that is completely free, completely fair, and completely credible. It's the degree that you need to be interested in. So for me, I'm hoping that this will be an isolated incident, some hot-headed politician somewhere who's decided that this is the best way to disenfranchise those people, because obviously that's the objective. If you're burning the ballot, you don't want the vote in that center counted.
So what is the fate of that particular area? Does it mean that we're going to have a rerun of the elections?
Well, it all depends on INEC. I can't guess what INEC would do right now. Possibly they just notify that center. Possibly, I don't see a rerun coming for the presidential elections. I don't see a rerun of that center. Then one thing I want to mention is there may be it is possible that nobody took a picture or video because the way they may have stormed, the thugs or whoever did this, the way they may have stormed that place may have been gunshot first. So if you are hearing gunshots coming to your direction, you run.
Run away.
From what I'm seeing in that video, the people started coming back later. That was when that video was made. I'm just making an assumption based on what I can
Because at the
gather.
time we saw the ballot papers had burned almost
so
out.
it's possible that they came with full force violence, shooting in the air, and people ran away. So they settled down and did all that. Then when the people came back was when the video was being made. So it's difficult for someone to decide to take pictures right then or make a video right when it was happening.
When we come back, we'll talk about, how far we think we should have grown, especially looking at 2019 compared to all of the other elections we've had. But we have our correspondent, Amadine Uyi, who is standing by from Abuja, or in Abuja, to give us more updates as to what's happening where he is.
Hello, Amadine.
Hello, Marianne.
Hi, Amadine. Tell us exactly what's going on where you are in Abuja. Has voting ended, or has there been an extension in some of the places you've been to?
Now, for several of the polling booths where we visited, for some, voting has not ended because the turnout has been very, very massive. We visited several areas. We visited the Gariki area, several polling booths around the area 8, area 11. We also visited the central area and also visited the Wuse area. At the Wuse Zone 6 area, we met a very, very massive crowd. But the good thing about what we saw is that the voting went on very, very orderly. In fact, at the Zone 6 area, the voters were lined up several lines alphabetically casting their votes. There were no incidences, very, very few incidences. I met a voter who the card reader refused to verify his voter's card, but he was still allowed to cast his vote. And a lot of them said they were waiting for the outcome of the results. But voting is still going on, especially in the areas where they have massive, very, very massive crowd.
Now, Amadine, from your reports there, it seems that from your standpoint at the polling unit you visited, it was calm and then there's a large turnout. But on the flip side, we saw reports from Maraba as well. Throngs of people as at 10:15 a.m. trooping in to just ensure that they cast their votes as they open the gate for the election materials to come into place. So do you have any updates from Maraba? How are things going on there?
I know that Maraba is actually in Nasarawa State, but a border community between Nasarawa and the FCT, where you have many workers in the FCT living around the Maraba axis because accommodation is cheaper. But there are several communities like that, several local governments in Nasarawa State that the proximity to the city center is very close. So most of the time, people even assume they exist within Abuja, but they are actually in Nasarawa State. I know that at the Karo local government area, there were complaints. They had faulty card readers, and the ad hoc staff had called the INEC, and they had not, as of a few minutes ago, they had not come to replace the faulty card reader because INEC had said that voters, that they will have electoral officers who will be mobile and who will be available to replace faulty card reader. Now, the problem with the Maraba area is that the place is densely populated, so their voters and a lot of them came out to exercise their franchise. So the problem is just the crowd, getting to control the crowd and ensure that everybody that has come out to cast their votes are given the opportunity to vote.
Interesting. Well, what we could see from what we saw in that video, the security operatives were seemingly overwhelmed by the people. It looked like a whole village came to one polling unit, and as you have rightly said, that place is densely populated. have you heard of any disturbances whatsoever, apart from the fact that there was almost a stampede?
No. I think if what we observed this morning was that the security operatives were on ground. In fact, there were several checkpoints around the city center, and so you had to have an INEC accreditation to be allowed to pass such checkpoints. In fact, a lot of people were frustrated because they were trying to reach their polling centers, and if you met a checkpoint before your polling center and you were mobile, you would not, your car would not be allowed to cross the checkpoints. That was the problem we witnessed this morning. But now for the Maraba area, you are talking about one polling booth, but there are several. In fact, most of the polling booths around that area has a dense population. So the issue of having so many voters coming out to vote is cut across that axis, the border communities, not just Maraba. You have Maraba, you have Karo, you have Jikwe, you have Karishia, and they face the same problem. But from where we passed, we had not noticed any critical incidences. Now, most of the time, these areas are not areas that are prone to violence or prone to critical incidences during the election. But like I said, it's just the crowd. When we passed those areas, they had not posed a threat to security agencies. It was just a need for the ad hoc staff and the security agencies to try to be more organized.
All right.
And it's already past 3 o'clock. Do you think that we'll see collation of results start trooping in as much as possible from these densely populated areas? Because
no,
if...
the idea is that the results can only come in when voters have finished voting. Remember that INEC did not say voting will stop at 2 p.m. INEC said that they will stop people from joining the voting queues after 2 p.m. So if probably you had done your verification with the smart card readers and you're on the line, even if you have not voted, you will be allowed to still cast your votes even up to 5 p.m. INEC chairman had earlier said that the smart card readers had been configured to shut off by 10 p.m., giving room for areas where they have a very, very dense population to still cast their votes hours after the official closing time for voting. But even the results will only start coming in after everybody on the queue have been allowed to vote, and then the agents have verified that they can now start counting the results. So we're still going to go around from 4 p.m. because we know that those areas are densely populated areas, and we believe that around 4 p.m. they would have stopped voting, and then the counting will commence.
All right, thank you very much, Ahmadine, for speaking with us. We will contact you much later to find out more if there be any recent developments in Abuja. Thank you very much. All right, guys, you heard Ahmadine. Apparently, he's still saying that this issue is pinned on INEC staff and, of course, security agents as to how they handled the situation. If it were to be properly handled, we probably wouldn't have had the situation we had in Maraba. And he also talked about the fact that it's densely populated.
Yeah, I mean, so like I said earlier, it's obviously one of those places where you have multiple polling units in the same location. So, because that large number of people can't be for a polling unit. A polling unit can only have 500 people, and once you exceed 500, they break it into two. So that it's one of those multiple voting points. Obviously, if it had been, what I think is, if it had been a different person, a different human being responsible for that place, you might have had a different result. It's down to the initiative and discretion of the guy on ground at that point to manage that situation properly, and whoever was responsible just, I'm sorry, didn't think.
And the question that that skipped my mind while we were having that conversation with Ahmadine was, I even wanted to know, persons with disability, how did they manage through that crowd? Really?
That's what we are saying, mismanagement. They mismanaged that venue. And I hope, because he says there are other venues like that around the outskirts of Abuja, I hope it's not the same situation going on around there, because it will be very bad.
All right, well, we'll still be taking more updates from our correspondents around the country. Don't forget, we're still taking your thoughts, your comments. We want to appreciate everybody who's been posting on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, on our Facebook. It's at Plus TV Africa. The Okota video we got it from our Twitter handle. So
exactly.
people just keep sending those messages. And you can also join the conversation on our WhatsApp. We have our WhatsApp number on the screen right now. You could send us your story and be a reporter with Plus TV today as you give us live updates on what is happening in your area. Would like to continue looking at those updates, pictures, videos. I mean, we heard that there was a situation also with ballot papers in Abuja. We're yet to ascertain
how true
that is. And of course, so in some places, most people have been sending us pictures of their fingers, you know, that have been painted with indelible ink saying that they voted. We want to see more of those. And of course, if there's peaceful, you know, a peaceful atmosphere where you are, please let us know. And if there be any disturbances, also let us know. Hopefully, we can still speak with an INEC representative. We know they're having a busy day, but we would love to hear from them because there have been so many issues that need to be addressed by INEC.
Most definitely. Well, the conversation continues in just a moment. We'll just take a quick break and be back in just a moment.